Okay, so in today's setup guide, I'm going to be showing you the very best settings for the awesome Duckstation. So why do we want to emulate our PS1 games? Well, just like yesterday's RPCS3 guide, we need to come to terms that this hardware is very old. And if we've got the discs, we can actually emulate this to the best video settings, something even which the old hardware couldn't do. I mean, if you look at the gameplay footage I'm playing right now, this is currently upscaled to 4K, and it's pretty much the very best settings I can do this, which is of course the original PS1 simply couldn't do. So in this setup guide, I'm going to show you how to get settings like this. I'm going to be showing you how to enable retro achievements, which is a really cool free website where you can earn points for playing your retro games. I'm also going to be showing you some sound settings, and I'm going to be showing you how to convert your game files into .chd game files, which saves us space, and it means if you're using .bin and .q files, those files are no longer needed. .chd will load your game just like this one with one file rather than many within a folder. I'm going to be showing you a hell of a lot in this setup guide, so if you want to make your PS1 collection look really awesome, then check this one out. So then, before I start today's setup guide, if you like what you see today, hit notifications, subscribe and like so you don't miss upcoming content that I upload pretty much every day on my channel for retro emulation. It also helps my channel out a great deal, and I'd really appreciate that. So we're looking at Duckstation then, and in my opinion, in many others' opinion, is the very best definitive emulation experience for old PS1 games. So what we're going to do first then is go ahead and download the latest version of Duckstation. So this is the official Duckstation website, very simple to use. What we're going to do is just go to Windows, and what we're going to do is download Duck. Now it does tell us that we do need a couple of additional files installed. So if you don't have Visual C++ runtime, just download it first and install it. So in my case, I've already installed this. If you haven't installed it, this is a major prerequisite, and you do need this to run your games through Duckstation. So just go ahead and install that. What I'm going to do is download Duck. And once you've downloaded Duck, you're going to get yourself a zip file. So what I'm going to do is just create a new folder on my desktop. So right click, new folder, and I'm going to call this one Duckstation. If you want to call it anything else, that's up to you. It's going to work just the same. So after I've created this folder, I'm going to just drag that zip file inside, open up Duckstation folder I just created, right click on that zip file, and I'm using WinRAR for this, so if you're using a different extraction tool, it's going to work the same. And then we're just going to extract it here, and we're going to get everything come out. So we can now delete this zip file, we no longer need that. And what we're going to need for Duckstation is a couple of BIOS files. So I've got some BIOS files in my folder just here, and I'm going to just drag and drop those into my Duckstation folder just so things are nice and neat and put together. And I've also got a couple of games, so I'm going to drag and drop those also into that Duckstation folder. Right, everything is now nice and neat, so let's open up Duckstation folder again, and what I'm going to do is open up Duckstation itself. This is the executable file, or rather the .exe. Just double left click. Now this is the user interface for Duckstation, and the first thing you're going to see is to add some games. Now, as it says just here, the games that we need to be ending in file extensions .q, .bin, .iso, .ecm, .chd. Now, as it says under .chd, if you can convert your games into this format, then you're going to save yourself a load of space on your computer. So in my case, my games are both in .bin and .q. But they all work the same. So what we're going to do is just add game directory. So if we click on there, Now my Duckstation folder, which I've just created a minute ago, opens up and my games are in here. So if I just left click on the games folder and select folder, scanning recursively takes more time, but will identify files in subdirectories. That's what we want. So just press yes. And here's my games. So as we can see, we got Colin McRae Rally and we got Crash Bandicoot. Okie dokes. So next thing we're going to need then is to actually install our BIOS files. Now for this, I've got 3 PS1 consoles, 1 of each region, and I've got the BIOS files to go with them. So what we're going to do to install these BIOS files is just go up to Settings, BIOS, and if we just look at BIOS directory, we need to change this one just here. So what I'm going to do is point this into my BIOS folder, which is also inside my Duckstation folder. So I'm going to just click on Browse. And here's my BIOS file. Like I say, it's inside Duckstation folder. Select folder and just leave the 3 BIOS selections auto checked at the top. That's going to be fine. Now what we're going to do next then is actually configure our controller. So I'm using my Google Stadia controller for this. So let's look at the controller settings. So if we go to settings at the top here and just go down to controllers, what we're going to see is global settings, controller port 1, controller port 2. So if I just go onto the controller port 1 digital controller, what I'm going to do is just select the controller type. So I'm going to leave this to digital controller, or we can change it to rather emulate a different style, different type or model of a PS1 controller. So let's say for example analog controller. That's going to then emulate this style of PS1 controller, and of course there's a few different controllers for PS1. So by default mine is automatically set up. If you don't see everything connected to your controller as it's already set up for mine, just literally click on each one of these little buttons and press your corresponding button on the controller that you're using. So for example, I've just pressed up, and I've also pressed up on my D-pad on my Google Stadia controller. And so for left analog up, I'm also going to press that as well, or rather press up on my left analog Google Stadia controller. So what we're going to do then is just close out of here. We got our BIOS files installed and we now have the controller set up. So let's just boot straight into a game.
What have I got? What have I got?
And if I just double left click on the screen, that's going to bring us out. And I'm going to just go to System and Exit. And just make sure, if you want to save your state, what we're going to do is just leave this checked just here. So save state for resume. So if we boot back into this game, we'll get the option to load it from this save state point. So just press yes. Okay, so as we can see through Crash Bandicoot, it's looking very old. There's jagged edges everywhere, things don't look very coherent, and it's just a bit of a mess. You know, back in the day, Crash Bandicoot, I remember, it looked fantastic. It was like mind-blowing stuff, but today, it doesn't look too great. Even on a real machine, it looks terrible. So that was a great thing about emulation and Duckstation, is that we got the ability to change the video settings, and we can make these look really superb here in 2023. So what we can do to enhance how this looks is we can either go up to the main general settings and change the video settings, or we can change the video settings as per game. So for example, if I just highlight by left clicking once on Crash Bandicoot, right click, if we go to properties, here's our settings for this individual game. So they're very similar to the general settings on Duckstation, but rather than changing everything, like I say, sometimes it's just a little bit better if we can do this as per game. So what we're going to do, first of all, is just go to display. Now, render, some games which are supposed to be working on Duckstation and they don't load, sometimes it's down to your render that you're using. So by default, this is using hardware Vulkan. Other games might require DirectX 11, Direct 3D 12, OpenGL. So if you do get a black screen, then guaranteed that's likely going to be your catalyst. But for this game, it works fine on its use global setting hardware Vulkan. Now, if we go down to VSync, what we can do is eliminate any screen tear, and remember, PS1 was the big era of your 3D games, so we can eliminate screen tear, what we might see in the gameplay, by just checking on VSync. Now, as standard, this one is using 16:9. Now, PS1 games were released in the era of 4:3, so we should change this really to 4:3. So as you've seen just a minute ago in the gameplay, it looks stretched as well, and the reason that is because games weren't particularly designed for that aspect ratio, but rather the 4:3 aspect ratio. And if we just go down to scaling, what scaling is going to do is just smooth up the image just a touch. So as we can see under scaling, by default this is on bilinear smooth. So for this I'm going to go to nearest neighbor, and if we go down to enhancements, we got internal resolution scale. Now by default this should be running at 1x, and this is the beautiful thing about emulation, like I say, is that we can upscale our games internally well above 4K. So just remember, when you're upscaling the internal resolution, you might need some decent hardware to do this. I'm running an i7 11th gen processor with a GeForce RTX and 16GB of RAM, so by cracking this up to 4K 9x shouldn't be a problem for me. And if we drop down one to texture filtering, what I'm going to do with this is just pop on bilinear. I'm also going to enable true color rendering. Now, widescreen hack. Some games are going to give you some really strange artifacts if you enable this, so it's not completely stable, but give it a shot, and especially if you're using 16:9 aspect ratio, this should work in some games. Others, like I say, you will see some weird artifacts appear. But since we're using the hardware render, which we seen just a minute ago under display, render is hardware Vulkan, we can actually enable geometry correction, which is going to take away wobbly polygons and warping textures like it says so. So we've got all these video settings now in place. What we're going to do is just close out of here, and we're going to open up Crash Bandicoot with those settings. And by the way, if we right click on it, we can either have the PlayStation BIOS logo appear at the start of the game, or we can go straight into the game and bypass that. And if you want to play the game with its default settings, then just use default boot. I'm going to go to full boot.
What have I got?
And as you can see, that looked absolutely fantastic. So let's boot up Crash Bandicoot again, only this time I'm going to change it to the aspect ratio of 16:9. Like I say just a minute ago, it will appear stretched, but some of you might prefer this for the full screen effect. So if we go back to the Crash Bandicoot and right click, we're going to go to Properties, and from Properties we're going to go back down to Display, and aspect ratio, I'm going to put this one to 16:9. So all your other video settings, which we done just a minute ago, are still going to be in place. So I'm going to quickly boot this one up and Crash Bandicoot, and this time I'm going to go to fast boot, which is going to bypass that PS1 boot up logo. And like I say, now it's rather stretched. So let's just change this again. So Properties, this time I'm going to go to Stretch to Fill. And we're going to boot up Crash Bandicoot again. And as you can see, between 16:9 and full screen, there isn't much difference, just a slight with that last aspect ratio option that I used. So what we're going to do next then is we're going to look at something called retro achievements, so we can actually earn retro achievements whilst we're playing PS1 games. And this is a fairly new implementation that Duckstation had in one of its updates just a little while ago. So to enable this, we're going to go up to settings, and from settings we're going to go down to achievements. Now by standard, if you've got a fresh install with Duckstation, enable achievements should already be checked. If it isn't, then just make sure that's checked. And you've got other options here to enable encore mode and so on. Now what we're going to do is needs to register with retro achievements, and I'm going to just show you now the retro achievements website, which is absolutely free. So this is the retro achievements website. Like I said a minute ago, was absolutely free. All you need to do is sign up and just enter in an email address and a password, and you'll get given your username and password to use within Duckstation. So have a look at the website itself. Like I say, the link's going to be in my description, and we got a lot of people around the world actually using retro achievements nowadays. It's getting bigger and better. So once you've got your username and password, all you need to do then is just go to login and just pop in your username and password. And literally every time you earn a retro achievement, you'll get a little pop-up window with a little sound as well, which is quite a nice feature for playing your old retro games. And if you don't like the sound every time you get a retro achievement, then just go to notifications and uncheck enable sound effects. Now, some of you might be wondering, can we actually emulate a memory card for a PS1? So we got the ability to save and load states, like I said earlier on in this video. But if we actually go down to memory cards, you'll see that it's actually emulating a memory card, and those save files are going into one of your folders on your computer. In my case, it's going to my C drive, and here's my memory card file, which is saving. And if you want to emulate memory cards too, of course PS1 or PlayStation 1 had 2 memory card slots. We can just go down here and change one of those so we get memory card 2 as well. So what we're going to do next then is show you exactly how saving load states work. So I'm getting a bit fed up with Crash Bandicoot, so we're going to open up Colin McRae. Now bear in mind, I've not changed the video settings on Colin McRae because I did that individually for my Crash Bandicoot game. So open up Colin McRae Rally. Okay, so let's look at load and save states. So I'm going to play a little bit of this game and I'm going to save it and show you how to load that state back.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Over crest. Over crest. Into 1 right. Into 3 left. left.
Okay, so if I just pause that a second, what I'm going to do to save this part of the game, which is called a save state, is go to System, and at the bottom we're going to see Save State. And I'm going to use Game Save 1, just left click. And as we can see, save state is now been saved. So let's go back into the game.
Square right, don't cut fence.
And back to System, Load State. And my Game Save 1 is just here. It's even got the time and the date. So press left click on that. And here we go, we're back to where I just saved it from.
Square right, don't cut fence.
Okay, admittedly, Duckstation looks a little bit bland, but we can actually add some artwork to our games. So what we're going to do is just go over to this website, and we're going to go to this use URL. So just copy this text, and really click on it. Go to copy, and it tells us here what to do. So open Duckstation, Tools, Cover Downloader. And what we're going to do is go to Duckstation, Tools, Cover Downloader. And what I'm going to do just here is just Control and press V on my keyboard, which is then going to paste this line of website in. And then just check Use Serial File Names and go to Start, Close. And if we go up to the top just here, left click, and if you find your cover art isn't working, we'll go back to that website again, and we're going to copy and paste this second link just here. So copy and back to Duckstation, Tools, Cover Downloader, and I'm going to Control and V and just choose Use Serial File Names again and Start. And there we go, that website is worked perfectly. So just close. And what I was mentioning earlier about sometimes when you close your games down, it will ask us if it wants to save the state so we can resume the gameplay. If we just click on one of our games, right click on it, you'll see resume. If we just left click on this,
One left.
and as you can see, that's resumed back to where I was playing it from just a minute ago. So let's clean up Colin McRae Rally, and of course that's one of the fun things about emulators such as this, that we got the ability to really clean these up, just like you've seen a minute ago, Crash Bandicoot. So as we can see, this game, Colin McRae Rally, has certainly seen better days. It looks pretty poor nowadays, in all fairness. So this time, rather than setting it up individually, I'm going to go through the general video settings so we then don't have to individually configure each video setting for each game. So just remember, once we do this, that's going to then boot up your games in default with those settings that you're going to apply if you do this through general. So this time, rather than right clicking and doing it through properties, I'm actually going to go up the top here to settings, and I'm going to go back down to display. So we've got VSync, which is already enabled, and everything else looks fine here. So enhancements, like we know just a minute ago, for Crash Bandicoot, I put internal resolution scale up to 4K. I'm going to take the biscuit with this game, and I'm going to go to 16 times. Texture filtering, I'm going to put to bilinear. Geometry correction, I'm going to check. Now I'm going to close out of here. And this time, right click on Colin McRae and fast boot.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Over crest. Over crest. Into 1 right. Into 3 left. 4 left. Square right. Don't cut fence. right. Long 5 left, tightens, over crest.
And one of the other things I want to show was just make sure Duckstation is up to date all the time. It gets a fair amount of updates. So if you turn Duckstation on, sometimes you might get a prompt come up to ask you to download it. If not, then you just got to help at the top, check for updates. And no updates are available because this is literally this. I just downloaded this emulator, but guaranteed tomorrow or the day after there will be an update available for this one. Just install it, it will reboot itself and you'll be up to date. Now if you prefer a more basic style of interface, let me show you what I mean. If we go to System, Start Big Picture mode, it's going to bring us into this really old school mode, and we can still use the controller here. And things look a bit different, but essentially they're all the same. So settings, for example, we can choose video settings from here. So it's a little bit all over the place to some people, but those who've been following Duckstation for years will be more used to this approach. Now, one last thing, if you suffer from the lack of audio, if you get no sound, to sort this out, normally, most of the time, what we're going to do is go to settings, and if we just go down to where it says General, from General, we can go to Audio. Now, backend by default is QB. So if you get no output, no sound output, that is, it's worth swapping this over to X Audio 2. And that should hopefully clear up that issue for you. But for me, QB works just fine. And if you're using the QB backends for your audio and it still doesn't work, then we've also got driver. As you can see, mine's actually fine using WASPI, but you've also got WinMM option there. And if we go down to output device, mine is default output device, which is my laptop, but we've got a choice of options here. We can actually use headphones on this. And what I was saying earlier on in the video about using .chd files, as they'll save you more space on your computer, I'll leave the link in my description for this one, but we can download something called CHDman, and we can convert our .q.bin to .chd like it says just here. So just left click on download. And I'm going to download CHDman. CHDman, as we can see, has now been downloaded. So I'm going to just drag and drop this CHDman folder onto my desktop. And inside of that CHDman folder, what we're going to need to do is drag 2 of these. So we got q to chd.bat, and we've also got chdman.exe. And what we're going to do is go back to the Duckstation and games folder. And for now, I'm going to just drag these 2 into that games folder. You just click on q to chd.bat, double left click. And it's now converting our Q files into CHD format. As we can see, it's now compressing. So as we can see, once that process is finished, it's now generated my 2 games into .chd. So I can now delete Colin McRae Rally, which is in .bin.q. And let's be fair, these .bin.q files are a little bit irritating. There's lots of them in many cases. So I'm going to just delete these 2. And what I'm going to do is open up Duckstation again. Double left click. In this we can see at the bottom we don't need to move these .chd game files because they're already in the same directory. So load state. And that's it for today's Duckstation PlayStation 1 setup guide for Windows. As you can see, Duckstation really has some great hidden features. So if you're new to my channel and you like what you see today, be sure to hit notifications and subscribe. I upload retro emulation content every day pretty much. And also be sure to join me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok. And of course, no pressure added, but I always ask for donations in order to enhance my channel. And next year in 2024, I'm going to be moving on to bigger and better things to my channel. Anyways, until next time, stay retro.